What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Sorry for the lack of videos recently. Just been a lot going on for both of us over the weekend. So, had a lot going on, but we're back. We're ready to do some more videos here. And amidst all the craziness, we have a video here that will be a little less craziness for you. And that involves breaking down another free agent group that we think the Colts could potentially tap into this offseason to try and improve this group, and that is the tight end group. You know, Cody, we talked about this group a bunch over the last few weeks. You know, Jack Doyle, whether you want to bring him back or not, still a guy that is very limited in the passing, in the pass catching department. Molly Cox, you don't know what you're going to get in him, at least not yet. And Granson, again, a young guy, still is learning. You know, it seems like this group really needs an update.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Doyle might still retire, right? We don't know yet. We haven't really heard anything. It's been kind of weird on that front. But yeah, I mean, you're right. Like the tight end position, like there's just nobody that really stands out right now from the tight end position. You know, like a lot of people thought maybe Mo Ali Cox would be the number one tight end, and he showed some flashes. I feel like it's the same thing with Mo. It's like he shows flashes, but he never puts it all together. So I think it's become more and more clear the Colts are in desperate need of a number one tight end. They're in desperate need of a guy who can just take the top off of defense. You know, they haven't had that since, I mean, honestly, since Dallas Clark. It's been that long since the Colts have had a legitimate threat at tight end. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys here. We're going to look at this free agent class. There's a lot of guys that I like that I think could be pretty good fits with what the Colts want to do. I think, you know, you talked about how Jack Doyle is a little bit limited in terms of receiving. I personally think the Colts could go for a receiving tight end. That would be awesome in this offense. Whoever the quarterback is, that could be a big help to the whoever's under center for the Colts this year. And I'm sure we're going to dive in, talk about all these guys, because I think there's kind of similar to wide receiver, Derek, although not as deep. It still's a pretty deep and pretty good class if all these guys indeed do hit the open market.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a couple good names here, and we'll go with the first one. And it was the guy who had the best season of everyone in this entire group, and that is Dalton Schultz, the tight end from Dallas. He's going to be 26 coming into this next season. So just coming off of his rookie contract, but had 78 catches for over 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. Really saw what he was worth in that Dallas offense, right? I mean, you had a bunch of different guys in there, and nobody really ever accounted for Schultz. And Schultz was able to get some great plays and did all of that for worth $730,000. That's great production from them. You know, Dallas will probably look to keep Schultz. They're probably going to let a couple of their wide receivers go in free agency. My guess is that they won't let Schultz walk free. But again, with all the money decisions they need to make going forward here, Schultz is a guy that might hit the open market here. I mean, I'm surprised that I would be impressed if the Colts would be able to pull this off, because Schultz, I think, is a really, really good player.
Yeah, for me, he's my tight end number one in free agency. Like, if he hits the open market, like, you pay that man. Like, I don't care what it takes. But honestly, it's funny you say that. I don't know if he's going to hit the open market, but then there's been rumors out that Dallas wants to bring back Michael Gallup. So now you're like, okay, somebody's going to have to walk, right? Do they trade Amari Cooper? Do they let Dalton Schultz walk? We'll see. But I think there is a realistic chance he does hit the open market. And if he does, I mean, this guy, he is, you know, one of the younger guys of these good free agent tight ends, right? And I think he'd clearly be your future at tight end. You don't have to band-aid that position anymore, and you're set for the next 5 to 10 years. So, yeah, I like Dalton Schultz quite a lot, although he did have the most snaps out of any of these guys, so you kind of factor that in. But also there's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas, right? There's a lot of guys looking to get the football, and Dalton Schultz certainly came up big when it didn't matter. And he had the most touchdowns out of probably any of these guys we looked. He had 8 receiving touchdowns last season, so pretty good in that department as well. And I think he's just a overall really solid player, really good receiving tight end here. So I like him here. He's personally my favorite guy that I would want the Colts to potentially pursue.
All right, so the next guy that we have here, I don't even know if we'll even discuss this, because most likely he retires, and even if he doesn't retire, doubt that he even wants to come to Indianapolis, and that's Rob Gronkowski. He's going to be 33 years old. I mean, it had a phenomenal season. He's been having some good seasons with, Tom Brady and Tampa Bay over the last few years. But again, like I said, just don't think there's much to this. 33 years old. He's not going to be around for much longer if he even is around. I just don't think that he wants to hit the open road again.
And if he would play, it wouldn't be playing with Carson Wentz or insert the blank of whoever the Colts are going to have.
Right.
He'd want to go play with an elite quarterback. You would think, right? He'd want to play with a Super Bowl contender type of quarterback. So, yeah, I don't think Indianapolis is a destination at all.
And then this is the one that I know you have been talking about a lot recently. This is probably your second favorite, and it's definitely, I think it's my favorite, or my second favorite potentially, and that's Mike Gesicki, tight end out of Miami. 26 years old, played in all 17 games last year, had 73 catches for 780 yards, and had 2 touchdowns to go along with it. I mean, he was criminally underused as well. I mean, I'll be honest, I think about a sixth of that production of his entire year came against the Indianapolis Colts, when I think he had 100 receiving yards and had 1 touchdown in garbage time. So, I mean, he was criminally underused in Miami. They don't really have a great passing offense over there, but Mike Gesicki has really shown off his physical attributes, and he's a guy that not only can catch the ball, but he also can run block very well as well. So he fits right into what this Colts mold would be. I mean, Gesicki was only getting paid $1.5 million the previous year. I mean, I think he has proven to be probably one of the top tight ends on the market for this upcoming free agency period.
Yeah, and he played with Jacoby Brissett for 5 games, if that tells you anything, and he still had over 800 yards. So, yeah, I like Mike Gesicki quite a bit. I think he'd be a perfect fit in this Frank Reich offense. He's more that all-around tight end, like you talked about, that you're looking for. And I would personally love Mike Gesicki. There's a lot of guys you can hear me say I would love, just because you need to upgrade like drastically, I think, at tight end. And Gesicki would also, similar to Dalton Schultz, would be, kind of your guy, your number one guy for the foreseeable future. So I think, yeah, him and Schultz right there are 1 and 2 for me. But I could be convinced that Gesicki could be number 1, because I think he is a tremendous player as well.
Absolutely. And then we go to another guy here that a lot of people were talking about last season, pairing up with Carson Wentz. He's going to hit the free agent market again this year, and that is Zach Ertz. Just turned 31 just a few months ago. But this last year, even though he's a little older in age, still shows he has it. 74 receptions, 763 yards, and 5 touchdowns with Arizona. So, he shows you he's still got some juice left in him, and, he could still be a guy that, even if he's only around for another 2 to 3 years, you can still see some good production out of him in the middle of the field. Well, how do you feel post Zach Ertz from the year prior? How do you feel now seeing what Zach Ertz did in Arizona?
I mean, I think the only situation I see Zach Ertz coming to Indianapolis is if the Colts keep Carson Wentz, personally, just because, if you're going to go for tight end, I get Zach Ertz is a good player, but I would rather go a couple years younger, personally. Not that he's not a good player, he is, but I think the only way it would make sense is if there's that connection with Ertz and Carson Wentz from Philadelphia, and, the Colts decide to go that route, and Ertz wouldn't be obviously as expensive as those other 2 guys, and he can still be a reliable option, be your tight end for the next couple years. Yeah, I still think he's a really good player, though. Like, don't get me wrong.
Next one, Tyler Conklin, the tight end out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Played all games last year as well. 61 catches, 593 yards, 3 touchdowns. I don't really know a lot of Tyler Conklin. He's kind of been one of those guys that have come in after the group of tight ends that we've seen in Minnesota over the last few years, and Conklin's kind of just gone under the radar because, you hear about Thielen and Justin Jefferson all the time, but Conklin, still getting 10 yards per reception and had 3 touchdowns. I mean, still pretty productive, and only 26 and a half years old, so still really young there.
Yeah.
What do you think there in terms of potentially going for a guy like Conklin?
I've always liked Tyler Conklin. I don't know why, but I've always thought he was a good player that just was kind of like Gesicki. He was kind of underused and kind of lost in this offense. You talked about the Vikings have two fantastic receivers, and they have a pretty good running back in Dalvin Cook too. And I kind of felt like he was kind of the fourth option a lot of times in this offense for Minnesota. And so, but I thought when he was called upon, I thought he did a great job. I thought he, like he talked about, his receiving average is always good. Catch yards per reception and all that stuff. So I think he could be a potentially lower risk, potentially high reward type of guy because I think he's a good player personally. And he's not going to command that kind of money that a lot of these guys are going to command. And I don't know. I just really feel like he's a solid under the radar signing that the Colts could make if they don't want to go, for the jackpot essentially for tight ends.
Absolutely. I'm not even going to mention Jared Cook's name because 35 years old. I know he had a phenomenal year with Justin Herbert, but I mean, when you look at the offense, the way it's set up for the Chargers, it benefits Jared Cook a lot more than what it would be in this system. And again, he's 35 freaking years old. Okay. I just don't. I don't see the Colts banking on the past success of a 35-year-old tight end to lead this group. Now, the next one, this one might be my tight end crush here because, I mean, I love this guy. Seeing what he did in the postseason with the Bengals, and that's CJ Uzomah. I mean, talk about a guy that came on really late and had a phenomenal season. 49 catches, 493 yards, 5 touchdowns, and then had a phenomenal postseason as well, all the way up until the Super Bowl. My only concern about this, Cody, is I just don't think the Bengals are going to let him go. I don't think they'll let him go because this guy is absolutely beloved by this organization, absolutely beloved by this fan base. They absolutely love him. There was a video of him the other day when they're getting off the buses to come back home. He was high-fiving all the fans as he was walking back to his car to go home. I mean, this guy's a fan favorite. He loves this city. He loves this team. I just think it'd be very hard to pull Uzomah out of this Bengals organization without a hefty price tag.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to stay. I'm just going to be honest. He's going to stay in Cincinnati. Like the feeling is mutual with them, with that love, the mutual love. So yeah, but yeah, if he hits you up in market, certainly, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Right. And I mean, because the Bengals think, oh, that offense is so good, right? I mean, they'll think that Uzomah might be another guy that they were missing late in that season that they could have afford. Again, they're going to go with the offensive lineman, but Uzomah might want to say, okay, I'll take a discount this year if we can try and run it back. That might be a thing that probably will happen for him. Next guy, that is Gerald Everett, the tight end out of Seattle. 27 and a half. It's going to be 28 when this season comes up. But playing 15 games, 48 catches, 478 yards, 4 touchdowns on the year. So, a guy that definitely is productive. I mean, Cody, could we see a Russell Wilson, Gerald Everett package deal coming this offseason?
Oof, that would be nice. I would take that in a heartbeat. Yeah. No, I like Gerald Everett. I wanted him last offseason, honestly. If you remember that, he was one of my guys that I really was advocating for, and the Colts just, for whatever reason, just didn't really seem interested in going after free agent tight ends. But I've always thought he's an underrated player that, when he was with the Rams, thought he was always underrated. They had 2 tight ends that they kind of used a lot of times. And, now with Seattle, despite the fact that Russell Wilson wasn't ever really healthy, Gerald Everett was still a really good tight end. And I think he's probably mid-tier tight end, but I think he just certainly has some upside in terms of the receiving mark. So he could be a guy that the Colts could implement in a lot of different ways in their system. So if Seattle doesn't bring him back, yeah, I mean, I'm interested in him. I don't think his ceiling's quite as high as some of these other guys, but I still think he's a solid player, and he's still fairly young as well. You mentioned he's going to be like 28, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Everett never has amazing stats when it comes to the tight end group. His play never jumps off the screen, but he's always consistent. And I think that's something that the Colts are missing right now is the consistency factor in the tight end room. So that helps.
Yep.
Next player here, David Njoku, from the
Yes.
Cleveland Browns. Going to be
Yes.
26 for this next season. You guys might remember he wanted to potentially be traded last season going into the offseason, but that never ended up happening because he kind of wanted to be that number one guy. And Njoku this past season played 16 games, 36 catches, 475 yards, 4 touchdowns. He had the same numbers as Gerald Everett on 12 less catches. So Njoku is exactly the kind of tight end that you would want in a pass catching oriented fashion because Njoku is that guy. He is always specialized in the receiving aspect of his game. And again, like I said, going to be 26. This guy is young. Njoku is probably going to not get a huge price tag. So this is one that you could definitely bargain for. I'm kind of cool with the Colts going with Njoku. I know some people are kind of turned off by Njoku, maybe partially because of how he handled things in Cleveland. I kind of get that, but it's kind of the same thing that we always said about some of the other positions. Njoku was the number one guy, and he was doing really well with Cleveland, and then they just brought in Austin Hooper and said, okay, we're going to replace your spot with Hooper now, even though we want both of you to play. Njoku would clearly be the number one tight end with Indianapolis if he were to come here. What do you think about David Njoku here?
Upside is through the roof. I'll just say that. David Njoku is a very talented tight end. He's talented. He's young. And I think the reason he's leaving Cleveland is just because they decided to replace him for some odd reason. So I would love this one personally. This is a lower risk. You're not going to pay a ton, but a very high reward for a guy like Njoku. Like, honestly, I think he could be, the steal of free agency. I know that sounds crazy, but like he is that type of player that I think he is that talented. If you get him in the right system, if you give him enough snaps, I really think that, he could be a really good player in this system, a really good player. So, yes, I love David Njoku.
Yeah, my friend who's a Cleveland fan absolutely loves Njoku. I think he's sad that Njoku's probably going to be leaving. But, that's just how the world works in this system. Okay, let's go to another one here before I get into the wild cards that we're having here. Robert Tonyan didn't play as many games this year, got hurt middle of the season, but he's going to be 28 for this upcoming year. And, the previous, I think, 2020, had 10 touchdown catches with Green Bay, had a phenomenal 2020 season. Obviously, 2021 season came up short, but Tonyan, again, in 8 games that he played, 18 catches, 204 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tonyan is a wild card. I think that he is a guy that has really come on over the last few years. Don't know whether or not he's going to want to move on. Maybe he waits another year to get his market up again. But then again, him being hurt the way he was might impact his market a little bit. I don't think he's quite recognized as that elite level tight end group that some people are looking at. But this guy could be tier 2 when you're looking at the potential upside of a guy like Tonyan.
The question for me for Tonyan, first off, the injury, obviously. That's got to be the first one.
Right.
But second off, is he a product of Aaron Rodgers? I think that's going to be the big question that you ask yourself. With any of these, tight ends or receivers that are playing with these elite quarterbacks, right? Like, is it a product of the system or is he just that talented of a player? I don't know where I stand on Tonyan right now, personally. I could see both sides of it. But yeah, you talked about his 2020 season. It was a really good season. He had over nearly 600 yards, 11 receiving touchdowns. So that's nothing to just turn away from, right? He's a guy that is a really good player, in the right system and with the right quarterback. But is it more than that? Is he more than just a system? I don't know, man. I don't know for Tonyan. I think he's a good player, certainly. I just don't know if he's worth investing in. You know what I mean? Like, without an Aaron Rodgers, basically.
Right. Yeah. I feel you on that. Let's kind of talk here we kind of talked about the big names let's kind of talk now about some wild cards. Here's what we'll do, Cody. I'll kind of name one. If there's another person on this list that you think could be a wild card, you let me know. We'll kind of just go back and forth on this until we run out of names that we think are improving.
I just got to say, if you say Eric Ebron, I'm going to leave this.
I was just about to say, I was going to throw that name in there just at the end.
I knew you
would. To kind of mess with you, but darn it.
I knew you would.
All right, I got you. All right, let's try this one. Evan Engram, former first rounder, was drafted a few years ago by the New York Giants. Needless to say, his career did not start off the way that we kind of wished it did, right? Rookie season, had a phenomenal rookie season, got hurt, and then Daniel Jones gets drafted, right? And then his numbers just plummeted. Now, granted, Evan Engram did come into a case of the drops. That was also the thing. But then again, when we're looking at it the way that the offense was running, I mean, you're going to look at any of the offense that the New York Giants have ran over the last 2 seasons. I'm just telling you right now, it is clear to say that Evan Engram needs a new place to go. Because this guy's definitely got the athletic ability to be able to do things. That offense was atrocious. Even in that offense last year, 46 catches for 408 yards and 3 touchdowns. Even with that offense, that was atrocious. Yep. And, Evan Engram, he's not going to get big bank. He's not. Right. I mean, again, it's a kind of thing like, do you take the chance on the wild card, right? Because we're kind of already banking on that with the group that we do have. But then again, I just think the upside with an Evan Engram, we saw it in his rookie season. This guy can play. It's just, do you think that putting him in your system allows him to become that same guy that he was when he got drafted?
The only thing else I would be concerned about is the durability. I mean, you kind of look at his 2018 and 2019, he missed multiple games. He played in 19 total games in 2 seasons there. Now, I will give him credit. In 2020, he played in all 16 games. In 2021, he played in 15 games. So I think maybe you have to kind of have the caveat, and you got to kind of realize and come to grips with probably going to have Evan Engram miss a game or 2. Like, it's just odds are he's probably not going to be there for all 17 games. Right. I think that's just what history has shown you to this point. That's kind of been one of his knocks as well. It's just been the injury history. But I mean, yeah, if you're willing to take a very low risk thing for Evan Engram, I think the potential is there. Like, you're right. Like, the potential is there for Evan Engram if he gets in the right system, if he plays with the right quarterback. I think he can. You talk about the drops. So that's the thing that scares me is the drops, because we experienced that at the tight end position, right?
Yes.
With Eric Ebron, and so, is he a chronic drop guy, or is it just more of a mental thing?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is there, but I've seen way too long, Derek, in the last decade, too many receivers and too many tight ends on this team that just drop easy passes, And that would be my biggest concern is just like, I'm so tired of that. I'm ready to have some guys who you can trust at tight end. He's more of a project to me than a lot of these other guys. I'd personally rather go with a guy that's a little bit more proven at tight end, because you already have had projects in Mo. You already have a project in Kylan Granson. I want to get a guy, man. I want to get a true number 1 guy.
Right.
And I don't think Evan Ingram's it personally.
I got you. You got anyone here on this list that you think will be important?
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Okay. So if we're going basically off of that, how about OJ Howard? I'll just throw that name out there as well. Another former high round pick, man. He's only 27 years old. He's obviously buried in the depth chart right now with Gronk and, with guys like Cameron Brate at Tampa Bay, but he's still a talented guy, right? What are your thoughts on OJ Howard?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. A very talented guy that's got brought down because of the roster. I mean, I just think that a lot of times he just doesn't create plays as much as I thought he was when he was going to come out of college. And I just don't know how I want to handle that. Again, project. His body of work just hasn't quite lived up to some of it. I at least saw with an Evan Engram, his rookie year, I at least saw what was supposed to be an amazing tight end career to start. But I just don't know if I can say that with OJ Howard and how it's tracked down, right? Like the stats have gone down and down and down and down. I just don't know. Like, even though Ingram's has gone down and down, he's done it in a worse offense with a worse offensive scheme. I just feel like that would be a little bit better for me rather than stretching for a guy like OJ Howard, even though I like the prospect of that.
Well, my question is, here's my argument. Evan Engram got a lot more snaps, than he ever did. He got a lot more targets.
Yeah, you're
as
right.
well.
He was in for double the amount of snaps. You're right.
Right. So I guess my question is, like, the Gronk effect. How much does that, impact a guy like OJ Howard, where you're just buried in the depth chart and you're, basically the guy you're competing against for snaps is the greatest tight end of all time, arguably.
Yeah.
Like,
you're right.
So I don't know. The last 2 years obviously have been super underwhelming, but you see when he actually got targets, he actually wasn't too bad. He was averaging right around 16 his first 2 years, which is pretty decent, per reception. So but yeah, I think I agree with you in the sense that he is just a project guy, and I'm done with project guys at this point for tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather get a guy that maybe isn't like, and people are going to say, okay, what about a guy like David Njoku? I don't think he's necessarily a project as much as an OJ Howard or as much as any of these other guys we've been looking at here. But yeah, I don't think it's worth it personally. I just don't.
Oh, I totally agree with you. You talk about some of these other guys potentially. There's a couple other names that come to mind for me. Just a couple.
Okay.
Well, first I would say, I'll bring this name up. I know some people think this is crazy, but I'll just bring it up anyway. What about Jesse James, tight end out of Chicago?
Okay.
Last season, played in 14 games. It had very limited production. I get that. But when you look at what the offense was like for Chicago, they were doing really bad, obviously.
Yeah.
And Jesse James, we've seen Jesse James play, and we've seen him do a lot more than what this previous year shows. He played with the Steelers for a while, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say he played with the Steelers, and it had some good moments at times. Again, he's going to be only 28 going into this next year, so young, and I think he has more in him than what some people would believe.
He didn't have any snaps the last year. That's my thing.
Yeah,
he had what
265 snaps last season.
8 targets the whole year.
Yeah,
so
8 targets the whole year during that. Jeez.
Yeah, I'd rather have a guy that's been a little bit more productive personally. Like, even in Pittsburgh, the most yards he had was 423 1 year. Other than that, he hasn't cracked 400 yards ever in his career. So, yeah, I'm not so much a Jesse James guy personally. I just don't really think he's like, I don't think he's much of an upgrade over Jack Doyle, if any. Personally,
that's very true. Yeah, it's very true. Yeah, at that point, you'd be just interested in just keeping. You'd just be interested in keeping Molly Cox at that point. The production's still there. You look at some of these other options here, though. The other tight end coming out of Seattle, Will Dissly. He's going to be the other guy that potentially is. He's going to be he took snaps from Gerald Everett at times. And, it makes me wonder, I think Seattle is going to choose between one of them. They'll probably go with Dissly at the end of the day because he's going to be the cheaper option than Gerald Everett. So that's probably the route they would go. But, Dissly going to be 26. Had 21 catches for 231 yards and a touchdown. He'd definitely be the cheaper option.
Yeah, he would. But yeah, you're kind of like with all these guys, it's kind of a crapshoot. You're just like, I don't really know what I'm getting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Ugh. Yeah, that's the sad part. We're talking about the wild cards here, but it's just like we're looking at all these negative parts to their game.
Yeah.
And it stinks because we don't want to do that, but at the same sentence, hey, you want to go with Jimmy Graham? 36 years old next season. hey, listen, he had 14 catches for 167 yards and 3 touchdowns, bro, with that offense.
Oh man! Well, at that point, man, we'll just throw you or I out there, and we'll
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
get 14
I'm
catches.
interested to hear your opinion on Hayden Hurst. I doubt there's much to that, but
Yeah, I
13
don't know.
games last season, 29 going into this next season. 26 catches for 221 yards, 3 touchdowns. The only thing that concerns me, I don't think there's a big play aspect when it comes to his game. And second, he led all free agent tight ends in fumbles last season.
Oh,
He had
jeez.
just as many fumbles as he had touchdowns. So,
Yeah.
we already
I mean,
had a lot of tight ends that are that don't take care of the football. I think
Yeah.
I'd prefer to, have somebody that takes care of the football a little more.
say I can only handle so many Jack Doyle fumbles.
Yeah, I know, right?
In my
Jeez.
lifetime. So, yeah, probably not. Okay, here's a name though that is kind of intriguing: Durham Smythe, Miami tight end as well. I know him well from Notre Dame. I think he's a physical freak, man. I like Durham Smythe. He's only 26 and a half years old, maybe 27 by the time the season rolls around. Obviously playing second fiddle to Mike Gesicki for a long time. I don't know. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't hate it.
Does get over 10 yards a catch. I try to look for that. I'm trying to look at that being the key factor here and how I kind of look at some of these guys. Like, you're looking at the number of yards per catch, and that kind of a lot of times will tell you the kind of tight end that you're getting. I mean, of the free agent guys that lead all of this in receiving yards after the catch, ironically enough, the top 5 guys in yards per catch, Dominique Daphne from Green Bay, who had to step in for Tonyan, Rob Gronkowski with 14.5. Daphne had 17 per catch, but he only had 2 catches all year. So that's like, that might be a little misconstrued. Molly Cox, ironically, is third on this list with 13.5. David Njoku is 4th with the same thing. And Ross Dwelly, the tight end out of San Francisco, had 12.8. So, gives me, again, all the reason I love David Njoku out of this option because, getting the same amount of yards per catch as Molly Cox. And he showed, even with Austin Hooper being the guy, Njoku still, had maybe he only had 60 more snaps than Molly Cox, but had 12 more catches and had over 150 more yards. So, it goes to show you, like, David Njoku, man, he's productive in the snaps that he gets. So, I'm going back on the David Njoku thing. If the Colts don't get Gesicki or Tonyan or Everett or one of those guys in there, or even a Schultz or Ertz or something, I'm throwing all the chips in on Njoku. I'll be honest. I'm kind of okay with Njoku. And you know what? If you don't think that Molly Cox is going to cost you that much, if you want to re-sign him and he doesn't want to go get paid, if he doesn't, get an offer of $6+ million a year to go somewhere else, you can get Njoku and Molly Cox. Keep them both. That's that's great for your tight end room.
I'm gonna say, like, the physical, like, freakiness of your tight end room goes up tremendously if you do that.
Oh, yeah.
And they would complement each other very well because Njoku's a very great receiving guy, and obviously Mo Ali Cox is a really, really good run blocking guy. So yeah, I mean, I could see a scenario where that happens, honestly. And I would not hate it at all. So yeah, Njoku's a guy I would love. I would love to have David Njoku, and he's not going to cost as much. So hopefully NFL teams don't see that, and the Colts can get him for a lot cheaper than the other tight ends if they do go that route.
Is there anybody else on this list that you can think of that we need to cover? And I think we covered practically everyone here.
I was going to say, I was looking and I was like, I don't recognize half these names down here. So probably not.
Well, I'll just say this for the comment section. If we miss somebody in this group that we should have covered, you'd be sure to let us know. Maybe we can make a video on it as well. But I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. I mean, I think we talked a lot more about this tight end group than what we originally thought about coming into this video. So that's good. It means there's some options out there. And like we said, I think this is a group that the Colts could definitely look to upgrade in, and it wouldn't break the bank on a couple of these guys. But like I said, tight ends, a very underappreciated position in the NFL nowadays. Some of the best teams in the NFL have great tight ends. Before this year, I would have argued that the tight end position was the most important position on the offense besides quarterback for a team skill-wise, because, you're looking at some of the Super Bowl champs over the last few years. Even teams who have made it to the Super Bowl have had great tight ends in this league, and I think it's important that you have that as a passing option. Thank you guys again so much for the continued support. Let us know your thoughts in the comments from Cody and myself. Thank you very much. And as always, go Colts.